You ever hear a name so often that it just sticks in your head whether you want it to or not? For me, that name was Brian. Brian from work. Brian said the funniest thing today. Brian thinks I'd like that new Thai place. Brian this. Brian that. Every time my wife said his name, she smiled a little too wide. Every time her phone buzzed during dinner and she laughed under her breath, it was always just Brian from work. Just Brian. Always just. Now, I've been married to Emily for 6 years, and we've been together for 9. I'm no detective, but I'm also not an idiot. You notice things when you live with someone that long. You notice when the warmth in their voice disappears when they're talking to you, but lights up when they're texting someone else. You notice when the phone never leaves their hand. When the late meetings start stacking up. When we're going out for drinks after work, happens 3 times a week. I'd ask her about it. Casually. Always casually. How was work? Oh, the usual. Brian's been on fire lately. He got the client to agree to a last-minute change, and the whole office was like, whoa. And she'd laugh. Like it was the most charming thing in the world. I started noticing it about 3 months ago. First it was just his name. Then it was the way she'd mention him in these subtle little, isn't he so interesting ways. The kind of ways people don't even realize they're doing. I tried not to jump to conclusions. I really did. I gave her the benefit of the doubt for a long time. I reminded myself that people can have friends at work. Not every male coworker is some lurking threat. But one night, I saw her phone light up when she was in the shower. Brian. Can't wait for Saturday face blowing a kiss. That emoji? That emoji sealed it. My heart sunk right into the kitchen tile. I didn't say anything right away. I let it fester. I did what every idiot in denial does. I hoped I was wrong. But deep down I knew. Then came the twist of fate. A recruiter I'd worked with years ago called out of the blue. Said a contract IT position had opened up, a short-term freelance gig at a mid-size finance company. Easy remote work. Good pay. Just needed someone to do a few back-end system audits, clean up some security protocols, maybe rebuild a few access logs. I asked him the company name. He said, Stanton and Hess Finance. I froze. That was Emily's firm. Now, if you're wondering what kind of man takes a job at his wife's company just to snoop, well, that's the kind of man betrayal turns you into. I didn't go into this looking for revenge. I went into this to find out if I was crazy. And if I wasn't, I wanted to know the truth on my terms. It didn't take long. I kept my work completely above board. They had no idea I was her husband. Different last names. Emily kept her maiden name for professional consistency. Irony, right? The first week, I played it cool. Got in, did my job. Made friends with the junior IT guy, James. Nice kid. Too green to notice I was digging through access permissions and log history with more curiosity than protocol required. On day 9, I found it. Slack. Company-wide. Everyone used it, from the interns to the CFO. Now here's the thing. A lot of companies don't realize just how much of their back-end data is accessible if you know where to look. And I've been doing this a long time. It started with DMs. I wrote a small script. Nothing fancy. Just something to scrape private messages from Slack's hidden archive folder on the backup server. I typed in Emily and Brian. What I got back made my stomach turn. The first few messages were flirty. Stuff like, Brian, you always make me laugh. I needed that today. Emily, same here. You're the only reason I'm surviving this job, LOL. Then it got worse. Brian, still thinking about last weekend. That Airbnb was such a good idea. Emily, shh, stop. I'm grinning like an idiot right now and Carl's across the hall. Brian, I keep replaying that moment in the kitchen. They had names for each other. EMS. B. They had their own inside jokes. They shared Spotify playlists. And there it was, an invoice, buried in an old message thread. Airbnb. 2 nights. Oceanfront. Company retreat extension. Booked on her personal card. Reimbursed through an internal expense submission for client experience session. I felt sick. She'd lied to me about that retreat. Said it was mandatory. Said she was rooming with a bunch of the girls from ops. There were no girls in those DMs. Just Brian. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there, staring at the screen, reading those messages over and over again. Each one felt like a little paper cut to the soul. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I had something better in mind. It's funny how quiet betrayal can be. It doesn't scream. It doesn't slam doors or break dishes. It just sits there, cozy, subtle, like a mold growing under the paint. You don't see it until something starts to stink. For me, That something was the thread of Slack messages I couldn't unsee. I read through hundreds of them over the next few nights, always after she went to bed. My laptop's screen brightness turned all the way down, my heart thumping like a scared kid sneaking out after curfew. They didn't write anything graphic, but what they did write was worse in a way, because it wasn't about lust. It was about connection, shared secrets, pet names, comfort, stuff that used to belong to us. There was one message that really did me in. Came through on a Thursday afternoon, timestamp just after 3 p.m. Brian, I hate that we have to pretend. You shouldn't have to lie for me. For us. Emily, I know. But he's been so distant lately. It's easy. Easy. That word landed like a punch in the throat. I'd been giving her space, assuming her silence was stress or burnout. Meanwhile, she was interpreting it as a permission slip to build a second life inside a chat window. I'll admit something here. Even if it makes me sound pathetic, I still made her breakfast every Sunday morning. Even after all that, part of me kept hoping she'd change course. That she'd walk into the kitchen and say, "You know what? I've been awful lately. Can we talk?" But that moment never came. Instead, I watched her type on her phone during pancakes, probably responding to him. The worst part? I think she wanted me to stay blind. The guilt wasn't eating her alive, it was empowering her, giving her permission to believe that I had failed her, not the other way around. But now I had something she didn't know I had, the truth. And in my world, freelance IT consulting and back-end diagnostics, the truth is leverage. It took about a week to set the trap, not because it was hard, but because it had to look natural. I didn't want her or anyone in that company to suspect anything unusual. It started with a fake Slack workspace I cloned from a backup. I mimicked their visual settings, copied in message histories, and created a few dummy accounts to fill out the channel noise. You'd have to look closely to know it wasn't the real thing. Next, I started working on the Zoom invite. I masked it as a mandatory team-building activity sent out from a spoofed internal HR address. Attached to the invite was a pre-recorded Zoom meeting, one I'd stitched together using screen captures of their private Slack conversations, formatted to look like a rolling chat. No context, no commentary, just their messages, line after line, time-stamped and unfiltered. It was brutal, honest, inescapable. But the final piece? That was the timing. You see, Emily had mentioned her company's quarterly town hall was coming up. They did it in the big conference room downtown. Full hybrid setup, all-hands Zoom link, some inspirational nonsense from leadership followed by slides about synergy or whatever. I called in a favor from a buddy who used to do AV work for corporate events. Told him I needed access to a public feed for a demo. Slipped him a crisp $100 bill, and suddenly I had what I needed. A 90-second window just after the CEO's welcome remarks. Right when everyone was watching. The night before the town hall, I could barely sleep. My heart was racing, and not from adrenaline. This wasn't excitement. It was grief. Cold, hollow grief. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you question everything you thought was solid. Emily was in bed beside me, fast asleep. Peaceful even. And I hated how much I still loved her. I stared at the ceiling for hours. Thought about the vacations we took. The tiny apartment we first moved into together. The time she broke down crying in our kitchen after getting passed over for a promotion, and how I stayed up with her all night, just listening. I remembered the way she used to pull my hand into her lap when we watched movies. The way she'd whisper, "I got you," whenever life felt overwhelming. All of it was real to me. I guess I just didn't realize it had stopped being real to her. The morning of the town hall, she left in a rush. She always did. High heels clacking on the hardwood, coffee in a to-go tumbler, voice trailing off. "I'll be late. Big meeting today." She didn't kiss me goodbye. I watched her drive off from the window and whispered, "Good luck, Em," because she was going to need it. Backstage, things were already in motion. The dummy Zoom account I'd created was prepped and ready, programmed to activate exactly 6 minutes into the live broadcast. My AV friend had already cued the feed, labeled innocuously as Team Culture Montage. The meeting started on schedule. Their CEO, a silver-haired guy named Martin with a navy suit and one of those politician smiles, began talking about growth, quarterly earnings, and the road ahead. Then came the intro to the team-building segment. Martin stepped aside. The projector screen came alive. At first, it looked like a normal Slack chat, because it was. Just not one anyone was supposed to see. The first few lines appeared gently. White text on dark gray. Nothing too alarming. Brian, did you see that dress you wore yesterday? Still thinking about it. Emily, stop. You're making me blush. A few people in the crowd chuckled. Then it kept going. Brian, I'm serious. If we're rooming together again at the next retreat. Emily, you'll behave yourself this time? Brian, can't promise that. The laughter stopped. More lines appeared. Faster now. Emily, he still has no idea. I feel bad sometimes. Brian, don't. You deserve to be happy. Emily, I'm happier than I've been in years. You make me feel alive. That's when the murmurs started. People glanced around the room. Some gasped. Someone in the back said, "Oh my God." HR stood up from their row, phones in hand. Legal followed. And Emily? She was front and center, right there with the other managers. Her face went pale. Her jaw fell open. For a full 10 seconds, she didn't move. Then she turned, looked straight at the AV booth, and knew. Back at home, I was sitting in the living room with my laptop open, watching the internal Zoom feed on mute, sipping coffee, calm as a Sunday sermon. My phone lit up with messages. First from Emily, then from unknown numbers, then from a contact saved as Stanton and Hess Security. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a folder labeled Backup Logs and dragged it to the trash. Deleted everything. All the scripts. All the archived messages. All the breadcrumbs. Gone. They'd never trace it back to me. Freelancers don't show up in internal org charts. And I'd already submitted my resignation, effective immediately, under a throwaway email they couldn't link to me. The last thing I saw before I shut the laptop was a Slack alert sent company-wide. All hands meeting postponed. Please await further instructions from HR. Emily came home late that night. No words. She just stood in the doorway, mascara streaked down her cheeks, staring at me like I was a stranger. Like I was someone who'd done something to her, not because of her. And maybe that's true, but I didn't flinch. She finally opened her mouth to speak, but I beat her to it. You kept saying it was just a coworker, I said. Then I stood, walked past her, and left. There's a silence that comes after everything falls apart. It's not peaceful. It's not calm. It's the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears like a broken streetlight, making you realize the world you thought you lived in was built on nothing more than polite lies and ignored red flags. That's the silence I woke up to the day after the town hall. The house was still. Not because it was early. Emily didn't come home. She texted me at 2:13 a.m. We need to talk. Please. I didn't answer. I sat on the edge of our bed, looking around the room we'd once built together. The travel photos on the dresser. The mismatched nightstands we picked out during a weekend in Asheville. The dent in the drywall from when we tried to hang a floating shelf and failed miserably. Little remnants of a life I thought was real. I wondered how long it would take her to realize I wasn't coming back. By mid-morning, the buzz online had reached full volume. I wasn't expecting to see it spread the way it did, but apparently someone inside the company had recorded the whole town hall. The Slack messages. The moment HR and legal stood up. Emily's face. All of it. They leaked it. And people were eating it up like popcorn at a drive-in scandal. Stanton in mess. Slackgate exposes steamy work affair at finance firm. That was the headline on one of the clickbait sites. Another called it the most awkward Zoom meeting ever. Someone even made a TikTok compilation with dramatic music and fake voiceovers. Emily's name wasn't in the articles, but people at her firm knew exactly who she was. And in finance circles, word travels fast. That night, she came home. I was on the couch. Didn't say a word when she walked in. Just watched her set her purse down carefully, like it was a bomb that might go off if she moved too fast. She looked like hell. Pale. Eyes red. Wearing the same blazer from yesterday, but with her hair tied back like she hadn't even tried to fix herself up. Can we talk? She asked. Her voice cracked on the word talk. I didn't answer right away. I just turned off the TV, set the remote down, and stared at her like I was seeing her for the first time. She sat down across from me, hands shaking. I don't even know where to start, she said. I stayed quiet. You knew. This whole time, you knew, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded once. Her face twisted into something between shame and anger. Why didn't you just confront me? Why go through all that circus, instead of just asking me? It was the first time I felt the heat rise in me. Not rage. Not even hate. Just the boiling truth. I did ask, I said. You laughed. Said he was just a coworker. She closed her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen. At first it was just flirty messages. Something harmless. Then it got confusing. I didn't think you noticed. You were always so distant lately. There it was. The excuse. Like I'd been asking for it. I leaned forward. Do you want to know when I first noticed? It was that night we were watching that dumb cooking show, and your phone kept lighting up. You giggled, looked down, then glanced at me like you were checking to see if I was watching. I was. She blinked, stunned. That was months ago. Yeah. She rubbed her forehead. So what now? Are we just done? I gave a dry chuckle. I think you made that call a long time ago, Em. You just didn't say it out loud. The days after that were a blur. Emily was placed on administrative leave. Brian resigned before they could fire him. I don't know if he got another job. I didn't care. The company launched a full internal investigation. HR sent out a formal apology to the staff. Slack policies were updated. Legal put out a statement, something about a failure in safeguarding confidential employee data. No one ever traced the leak back to me. I made sure of that. I moved out the following weekend. Not in a dramatic fashion, just packed a couple of suitcases and left the keys on the counter. I took my time. Didn't even argue when she asked if we could do a trial separation instead of a full divorce. You don't get to cheat and negotiate the breakup, I told her. She cried when I left. I didn't. Not out of coldness. I think I just didn't have any tears left to give. It's a strange thing, watching someone you love become someone you wouldn't even trust with a grocery list. I kept thinking back to the early years. The late-night fast food runs. The time she helped me build my portfolio website from scratch. The time she bought me a leather-bound notebook and said, "You should write about the way you see the world. You notice things." She said that. And now she was the thing I couldn't unnotice. A month later, she sent me an email. Subject, "I'm sorry." I read it. Every word. It was long, emotional, full of, "I didn't mean to hurt you," and "I miss who we were." She said Brian had blocked her after resigning, that their connection wasn't as real as she thought, that she'd been confused, vulnerable, searching for something she couldn't explain, that she wanted to try again. I didn't reply, not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I finally understood something. You can love someone and still know they're not safe for you. The weirdest part? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt clean, like I'd been dragging a heavy bag full of broken glass and finally let it go. She kept saying it was just a coworker. But the moment she made him more important than honesty, that's when I stopped being her husband. The morning I signed the divorce papers, it rained. Not the dramatic, thunderstorm kind you see in movies. Just that slow, annoying drizzle that makes your socks damp and your coffee go cold. The kind of rain that doesn't even have the decency to be cinematic. Just a nuisance, persistent and gray. Fitting, really. Emily sat across from me in the lawyer's office, wearing a coat I'd bought her last Christmas. Beige, belted at the waist, slightly wrinkled. She looked smaller than I remembered. Quieter, like she'd shrunk into herself. We didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The air between us was thick with everything that had already been said, and everything that never would be. Our attorney, a brisk woman named Donna with glasses that didn't suit her face, walked us through each section. Assets split cleanly. No kids, no pets. The house would go on the market. She didn't want to stay in it alone, and I sure as hell wasn't keeping it. The place felt cursed. Every tile and cabinet echoing back some version of Brian's name. When it was my turn, I signed each line with a steady hand. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Emily hesitated. Only once. On the page about marital misconduct. She stared at it for a long time, then finally wrote her name. I caught her glancing at me out of the corner of her eye, like she was waiting for some kind of mercy. I didn't give it. When it was done, Donna left to make copies. Emily and I sat in silence. It was the first time in months we'd been alone without any lies between us. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was raw, honest, maybe for the first time in a long time. I never meant for it to go that far. I didn't respond. I felt like I was fading, she continued. Every day at work, I felt like someone. And every day at home, I felt like a background extra in my own life. I turned to her. So you found someone who made you feel seen? She looked down. Yes. I nodded. I get that. She blinked, surprised. You do? Sure, I said. I get it. I just thought we were supposed to tell each other when that happened. Not go sneak off into Slack messages and AirBs. She wiped her cheek. I don't know if it was a tear or just rainwater. I wish I had. I really do. Too late now? I said, standing. And that was the end of it. The following week was quiet. Too quiet. I moved into a short-term lease just outside the city, nothing fancy. One-bedroom apartment, cheap blinds, that faint scent of someone else's takeout still lingering in the carpet. It was the kind of place you live when you're not trying to live anywhere. A waiting room with walls. But it was mine. And it was peaceful. Every day, I'd wake up, open my laptop, and dive into freelance contracts. Companies still needed people like me. The digital janitors, the code plumbers, the security guys with just enough ethics to toe the line. I kept busy. At night, I'd sit on the tiny balcony, drink a beer, and scroll through job boards like they were dating apps. Every listing promised something better. More money, less stress, exciting team culture. I found it all funny now. Team culture, right. Brian and Emily sure enjoyed theirs. I got a call one day from someone at Stanton & Hess. Is this Daniel Holmes? Depends, I said, cautious. This is Ryan Chun, head of cybersecurity now. I believe you contracted with us briefly last quarter. Yeah, I said. What's up? We've had some internal conversations. And there's been some concern about a breach during the last town hall. An anonymous stream was pushed through our projector system, and we believe it originated from an unauthorized device. I let the silence stretch. Ryan cleared his throat. We're not accusing you of anything, but we're doing due diligence on all contractors with access during that time frame. I smiled. Well, that sounds smart. Do you happen to have any copies of your work logs or access credentials from that project? Nope, I said. All my client data gets scrubbed after delivery. Part of my freelance agreement. Check the NDA. He was quiet for a beat. Then, right. Okay, thanks for your time. He hung up. I took another sip of coffee and chuckled. They were too late. It would have been enough to leave it there. Divorce finalized, secrets exposed, scorched earth behind me. But something about the way Emily had looked at me during that last conversation stuck with me. Not just the sadness. Not just the guilt. It was the part of her that still didn't understand. She still thought it was about Brian. It wasn't. It was about the way she rewrote our marriage in her head. Made herself the victim of a story she authored. Made me the obstacle. She told herself I was distant. Cold. Absent. But what about the mornings I brought her tea? The way I proofread every one of her performance reviews before she submitted them? The time I stayed up all night rebuilding her laptop after it crashed before a big presentation? She forgot all that. Convenient. That's when the final piece of my revenge started to take shape. Not anger. Not humiliation. Just truth. If Emily wanted to tell herself I never saw her, then I'd make sure the whole world did. I started quietly. There was a forum for corporate accountability, anonymous, but well-read in finance circles. Sort of a whisper network with better grammar. I submitted a post under a throwaway alias, detailing an incident at a mid-tier finance firm where two employees carried on a secret affair over company Slack, leading to public embarrassment and a culture audit. It got traction. HR professionals started sharing it. Mid-level managers commented with horror stories of their own. One guy said, I was in that room when it happened. People still don't talk about it. The story picked up steam. Reddit got hold of it. Then a podcast. Then a mid-level news blog that covered workplace scandals. All without names. But anyone who worked at Stanton & Hess, they knew. 2 weeks later, I heard Emily had resigned. Not officially. It was a mutual parting of ways. Corporate speak for, please leave quietly, and we'll pretend this never happened. Brian disappeared into obscurity. Word was he tried to pivot into consulting, but couldn't get a single reference from the firm. Meanwhile, I started to get more work than ever. Turns out, companies love a guy who understands the consequences of poor digital hygiene. One afternoon, while organizing files on my work drive, I found the folder I thought I deleted. The Slack archive. I stared at it for a while. I could have leaked it. I could have named names. But I didn't. Because that wasn't the point anymore. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about remembering who I was before I became a man watching his wife laugh at another man's texts across the dinner table. It was about reclaiming the part of me that still believed in truth, the part she took for granted. I hit delete. For real this time. Later that night, I got another email from Emily. Subject line, no subject. Just one sentence. Do you think you could ever forgive me? I stared at it, then closed the tab, and let the rain fall outside my window. People always talk about the storm, the explosion, the confrontation, the big unraveling. What they don't tell you is how quiet it is afterward. There's no applause, no closure, no music swell. Just ordinary days with coffee mugs, groceries, and a mailbox full of junk. You sit there in the silence, blinking, wondering what now. That was me, a month after the divorce. I'd thought that revenge, justice, really, would feel more satisfying. And for a while it did. That moment at the town hall. That was electric. Watching the truth scroll across the projector while Emily tried to disappear into her chair. Yeah, that was something. But that moment passed, and the rest of life came knocking. Turns out, moving on is harder than revenge. Because revenge is clean. It's sharp. It's simple. But healing? Healing's slow and messy, and full of mornings where you still instinctively reach for someone who's not there. My apartment had started to feel less temporary. I'd bought real plates, hung a couple photos, got a plant, which I promptly overwatered until it started to rot. But hey, effort counts. Work was steady. Better than steady, actually. After the whole Slack incident, my name started getting passed around a bit. Not as the guy who exposed his wife, but as the guy who understands internal risk. Ironic, huh? One day, I got a call from a law firm that wanted a full systems audit. Another from a mid-sized marketing agency worried about collaboration tool vulnerabilities. I'd become the digital equivalent of a locksmith after a break-in. People trusted me now. Go figure. And then came the letter. Not an email. A physical letter. Postmarked, handwritten return address. No name on the front, just Daniel Holmes. I recognized the handwriting the second I saw it. Emily. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Thought about just throwing it out. But curiosity is a hell of a thing. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No salutation, no closing. Just this. I don't know what to say that won't sound hollow. I've tried writing this a dozen times and deleted every one. I know I lied. I know I broke something we'll never get back. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to know I see it now. I see you. I didn't before. And that's on me. I read it twice, then set it down. And for the first time since the whole mess started, I didn't feel rage or sadness or even satisfaction. I just felt tired. Because she finally understood something I'd been screaming silently for months. And even though I no longer needed her validation, part of me had been waiting for that. Not to fix anything, just to know I wasn't crazy. A week later, I got another message, this time from someone I hadn't expected. Brian. It was a LinkedIn DM. Of all places. Hey man, not sure if you'll even see this, but I wanted to say something. What happened wasn't fair to you. I crossed a line, and I knew it. I thought what Emily and I had was real, but it wasn't built on anything solid. She was hurting, and I filled a space that wasn't mine to fill. I lost my job. Got blackballed from 2 firms since. I'm not looking for pity. I just wanted to say you were right. And I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Because what was there to say? I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted distance. And the more I let go, the lighter I felt. One night, a few weeks later, I went out for drinks with a buddy from college. First time I'd been in a bar since the whole ordeal. He asked how I was doing. I paused, thought about it, and answered honestly. I'm rebuilding. He nodded. You dating again? I laughed. Not unless she comes with a non-compete clause. He laughed too, but there was a part of me that meant it. Because I wasn't ready. Not just yet. But healing has its own way of showing up. One afternoon, I stopped into a bookstore downtown. Just needed something to read that didn't involve breach protocols or IT documentation. While browsing, I overheard a woman asking the clerk for recommendations. She had a warm voice, not flirty, not loud, just present. Curious. Real. We ended up in the same aisle. Made small talk. Joked about cover art and terrible titles. Her name was Rachel. She worked in nonprofit communications. Liked poetry, but didn't pretend to understand it. Had a laugh that sounded like it came from somewhere deep and true. We talked for 15 minutes before she said, Hey, this is a little forward, but would you maybe want to get a coffee? I blinked. It had been so long since anyone looked at me like that. Without suspicion, without pity. I smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. That first coffee turned into a walk. That walk turned into dinner the next weekend. We didn't talk about exes, or betrayal, or Slack. Just books, movies, favorite places to eat. She told me she hated olives, but loved olive oil. That she still had dreams about being a high school theater teacher. That she once cried watching a dog food commercial. And me? I told her about nothing heavy. Just that I'd worked in IT for years, liked puzzles, liked quiet, liked noticing things other people missed. She smiled at that. You seem like someone who sees everything, she said. Funny, right? I don't know what Rachel and I will become. But I know that when she looks at me, I don't feel like a ghost. I feel real. A month after that coffee, I got a final email from Emily. Just 2 words. Thank you. No context. No reply necessary. Because here's the thing about truth. It doesn't always heal right away. It doesn't erase betrayal or fix what's broken. But it clears the path. It makes room. And when you've been living in the dark for a long time, sometimes just making room is enough. 6 months. That's how long it had been since the Slack leak, since the curtain dropped on the lie I used to call my marriage. 6 months of waking up alone, of relearning silence. 6 months of shifting from bitterness to clarity, and clarity to something that, on my better days, looked like peace. Peace didn't mean I'd forgotten. It just meant the memories didn't have claws anymore. Emily was now a name in my phone I hadn't tapped since April. Still in there, still unchanged. I kept thinking I'd delete it, but I never did. Not out of hope, not even nostalgia. Just a strange kind of preservation. Like you keep a piece of glass from a windshield after a crash. Not because you want to remember the accident, but because it's proof you survived it. I was at my apartment late one Thursday night, tapping away at a client's data retention protocols when an unexpected sound broke through, a knock. Not the kind you hear in sitcoms. This one was hesitant, unsure. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. I stood slowly, peered through the peephole. Emily. Of all the things I thought I was ready for, this wasn't one of them. I opened the door halfway, leaving the chain on. She looked different. Not in the dramatic, new woman way. She wasn't made up, wasn't polished. Just tired. Human. She didn't smile. Didn't cry. Just said hi. I didn't answer right away. Finally, why are you here? I won't stay long, she said. I had to say this in person. I didn't unhook the chain. She took a breath. You didn't just catch me, she said quietly. You held up a mirror. And I saw who I really was. Not the version I'd built. Not the strong working woman who deserved more story I was telling myself. She looked down at her shoes. I saw someone selfish. Someone dishonest. Someone who hurt the only person who ever truly saw her. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about that since. I felt the air shift in the hallway. Her voice shook, but it wasn't a performance. She wasn't there to convince me of anything. Just to say what needed saying. You didn't deserve what I did to you, Daniel, she continued. You didn't deserve the blame I put on you to justify what I wanted. And when everything collapsed, when the fallout came down on me, I realized I had nothing left except the truth. And it was ugly, but it was real. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is the last thing. I promise. It's everything I never said. Everything I should have. You don't have to read it. I needed you to have it. I took the envelope. Didn't open it. Not yet. She looked at me one last time. Goodbye, Daniel. Then she turned and walked down the hallway, each step echoing through the concrete like punctuation. I didn't read the letter that night. I sat on the couch for a long time, just holding it. Not sure if I wanted to give her the final word. Not sure if I wanted any more words at all. But around midnight, curiosity won. I opened it. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple. For pages of her handwriting, talking about who she'd become in that job, in that affair, and in the life she thought she wanted. She talked about the quiet way guilt rots a person from the inside. How she'd blamed me for the distance she created. How she had thought feeling seen meant chasing attention, not earning trust. There was one paragraph that stayed with me. I thought love was supposed to make me feel full, but you kept showing me it's supposed to make you better. I wasn't ready for that. I thought I was. I said I was. But when it came down to it, I wanted easy praise, not deep connection. You offered me something harder, and I ran. And near the end, I know I'll never be the right person for you again. But I hope, one day, you find someone who sees you the way I never did. Someone who chooses the hard parts and stays anyway. That was the line that broke me. Not because it hurt, but because it was the first time she really understood. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That letter wasn't for fixing things. It was for closing them. Fall came. Then winter. Rachel and I had been seeing each other regularly by then. No grand gestures. Just calm, steady time spent together. Coffee on Sundays. Movies without talking. Silence that felt safe. One night, while walking through a park filled with rust-colored leaves, she turned to me and said, "You don't talk much about what happened." I nodded. "I will. Just not all at once." She smiled, tucked her arm through mine. I'm not in a rush. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was standing in someone else's shadow. I felt like I was home. Now and then, I still get asked how I pulled it off. The Slack hack. The projector stream. The perfect timing. People treat it like a caper. Like a heist movie. Like I'm some kind of folk hero for exposing cheaters. But I don't tell them the real truth. The truth is, I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I couldn't take the gaslighting anymore. I needed the world to see what I saw, not for them, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining it, that I hadn't gone crazy. That love, real love, doesn't hide behind emojis and calendar invites and secrets dressed up as coworkers. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about the moment it all changed. That text from Brian. The way she looked across the table when she laughed at it. That stupid little emoji. Can't wait for Saturday face blowing a kiss. Funny how one line of pixels can burn down an entire life. But here's what I've learned. Fire clears the underbrush. It destroys, sure, but it makes space for new things to grow. And I'm growing again. Not perfectly, not quickly, but honestly. So, if you've made it this far, here's what I'll say. If you're doubting yourself, if your gut is screaming but your mind keeps making excuses for them, listen to the quiet parts. The tone shift. The laughter that dies when you walk into the room. The phone that never leaves their hand. You're not crazy. You're seeing what you're seeing. Don't gaslight yourself just because they're good at lying with a smile. She kept saying it was just a coworker. Now, I don't even remember his last name. But I remember mine. And that's enough. Subscribe to the channel